I had a sister who was a year and a half older than me, but we weren't alone. We also had two other people in the house. They were a Jewish couple. They'd left Amsterdam toward the end of 1942 to go into hiding, and they had a little daughter, Nita. The daughter was sent to live somewhere else with another family, picked up a few months before they went into hiding, because you didn't want to hide with your children, because if one of you were caught and killed, at least someone would be left in the family. Our family doctor was Dr. Holtrup. He knew most families because he would come into their homes and deliver babies in their homes. And he was a member of the Christian Reformed Church, which is the basis for most of the resistance fighters in the Netherlands. This organization arranged for people to develop identity cards which are false and facilitate finding families for them. And half of those people were caught and killed. Holtrup came to our home and talked to my parents about the possibility of doing that. Now, it turns out he himself had been put into a prison because they suspected he might be working for the underground. He was in prison for 6 months and eventually released for lack of evidence. Michelle and Sally Nathans were a Jewish couple who lived in the Jewish section of Amsterdam. It's an area where other family members lived, and they were very much concentrated there. And in 1942, the Germans began a process of taking Jews to Poland from the Netherlands. The excuse was that it was for agricultural work. A couple of months later, they were able to get a connection to our family in Ermelo. They came in the door, and there was my mother holding my sister, Anita, in her hands and smiling at them. So they settled in. There was no idea at that time how long it was going to be. No sense that the war was going to last another 2.5 years. My parents had probably never met a Jewish person. If they were ever caught, they knew that they would be taken to a concentration camp. They were endangering their whole family. It didn't seem to enter their mind very much. They never really thought about that because they had, first of all, a faith that it was important to be there for other people. And especially they had a strong feeling about Jews as God's people. They decided to make a hole in the kitchen, under the kitchen floor, and make a place underneath where they put straw and put some bedding. And so at night then, they started staying underneath the floor. They would lay carpet on top and then put the table on top there. So they would go underneath and stay there. Who would look underneath the table? Who would have any idea that they would be hiding there? And very quickly, they developed kind of a kinship. They became a family. My mother said that later on, Sally became like a sister to her. And my father became like a brother to him. My parents grew up in families that read the Bible. So they read the whole Bible from beginning to end, the Old Testament, the New Testament. So the Jewish people sort of had a special place in their heart, and of ours too, because every time we would have dinner, my father would read through the Bible from beginning to end. He was an intellectual Christian, but also a really personal Christian. For him, his faith was real. He prayed every day. He read the Bible every day. And so his walk with the Lord was a very personal one, even when he was young. And so it sure was a major motivation for him throughout his life and for his concern for others, because after they came to America, they had a nursing home where they took care of people and took special care of them. It was high quality because the concern they showed for the Jewish people, they showed to people in general all through their life. They had been there for about a year, and my father tried to stay in touch with Nita and the family. So he would take periodic trips on the train to visit her to find out about what was going on. He went and talked to Michelle and said, for her birthday, I'd like to bring Nita to her. And that was only a few weeks later. And Misha said, yeah, I think it's a great idea. We'll make a surprise for Sally. We won't tell her. So my father went back and picked up Nita. Sally was upstairs waiting for the lunch, and then there was a knock on the door. My mother opened the door, and there was Nita and my father had come on the trip. And so Nita went up the stairs, little steps going up the stairs, and the doors open, and there Sally saw Nita for the first time in a whole year. And you can imagine the emotion as they cried and hugged and spent their time together. And they had a whole day together, and then it was time to say goodbye again. Maybe never to see each other again, because who knows what would happen to her and what happened to them. Eventually, they survived. They were hoping that they would still find their family and bring them back. They discovered that they were all gone. 71 members of his family, all gone. Parents, cousins, brothers, sisters, all except for one. Coming to America, people were free to elevate people who were rescuers and say, wow, that's pretty brave. You know, you risked your lives for the sake of people you didn't know. That was pretty amazing that my father and mother did that. When I was born, I was given the name of Paul, which was a tradition in our family to name your firstborn after the grandfather and the great-grandfather. So for many generations, the first son was named Paul. So I was the first son. I was named Paulus. I was pretty important. I was important to the lineage because I was going to carry the name of my family on. They were willing to sacrifice me, their son, their Paulus, for the sake of this Jewish couple. There's no way they were going to let them go, even though they were going to trade 4 of us for 2 of them. That didn't make any sense from any kind of logical, evolutionary perspective, right? Why would you do that? Why they did this? Why would they lay down their life for someone else? Is a question that I've asked many times. They were willing to sacrifice themselves. And indeed, there's the example in the Bible of Jesus sacrificing himself for us. And I think that in itself, that example may have been what inspired them to say, hey, why should we not sacrifice ourselves for someone else in the same way as Jesus sacrificed himself for us? And so at some point I started to realize I could have been killed. I was born and I could have died for them. And that was an important lesson for some little kid, some teenager to learn. And probably led me to go into psychology to try to figure out things like that. In a PhD program, you really don't have a whole lot of control, except I was allowed to investigate what I liked. So I started to study people. It's an interesting question as to why people do bad things. And as I became a psychologist and grew up, I said, why in the world haven't we learned our lessons from the Holocaust? Why are we still fighting, still having all these conflicts, still having massacres? Psychology has dealt with that, but hasn't solved the problem. The only solution is really the way of Jesus, of lifting people up above ourselves. Only then, I think, will we as a people in the world come to peace with one another. It's an amazing thing how people so quickly can change from one personality or one characteristic to the other. They can easily push one way or the other. So unless you have a strong foundation, a really strong foundation, a strong faith, it's easy to be pushed one way or the other. We can rationalize, well, yes, but we have orders we have to follow. Or these people, well, yeah, they're the kind of people, we get them out of the way. It's not about relativism, not about, well, let me see what's the best answer, what works. It's about what's right, what the truth is. And I think there is a truth. And the truth, for me, is Jesus Christ. My name is Professor Paul Paulus, and I am one for Israel.